Good evening and welcome to BBC Radio 1. I'm Laura Roser, and today I have a special program prepared to talk about a question that's been getting at me. What makes the music over here in the British Isles unique, and where can we place music in the midst of UK's culture and society? Through my personal experiences and extensive research, I have concocted a thorough investigation looking into music's roles in history, religion, tradition, and economy to find out how British Isles music has been molded to become such a vibrant part of life in the UK. First, let's look at the Edinburgh Military Tattoo. The Edinburgh Military Tattoo has used music as a means of showcasing the creative talents of the British Armed Forces, Commonwealth, and international military bands since its inception in 1950. On average, more than 217,000 people come out to see the military tattoo each year perform live on the esplanade of Edinburgh Castle. The tattoo takes place in August during Edinburgh's annual festival Fringe. The word tattoo in this context was derived from Doden Tap 2, or just Tap 2, the Dutch for last orders. Translated literally, it means close the beer tap. The term Tap 2 was first encountered by the British Army when stationed in Flanders during the War of the Austrian Succession. The British adopted the practice, and it became a signal played by the regiment's corps of drums, or pipes and drums, each night to tavern owners to turn off the taps of their ale kegs, so that the soldiers would retire to their lodgings at a reasonable hour. With the establishment of modern barracks and full military bands later in the 18th century, the term tattoo was used to describe not only the last duty call of the day, but also a ceremonial form of evening entertainment performed by military musicians. The general makeup of the military tattoo usually consists of 5 or 6 pipe bands. The infantry battalions of the Scottish Division are always well represented, and the regular services will provide at least one other band, either from the Guards, the Cavalry, the Gurkhas, or the Royal Air Force. The musicians in these bands are all fighting servicemen, for whom combat must take priority over piping and drumming. Based within Edinburgh Castle, the Army School of Piping, founded in 1910, will teach nearly all of the senior British military pipers, including many pipers from overseas that will play in the tattoo. Since 1981, the Army School of Piping has been formally tasked with assisting the Edinburgh Military Tattoo, including putting together the pipe music and directing the overall performance. In the time leading up to the tattoo, music is sent to all the bands some 6 months in advance so they can practice the tunes thoroughly. When the bands meet for the first time, less than a week before the show opens, they perform a run-through. This job, known as proving the music, involves playing through all the tunes and takes only about half an hour. However, the practice is integral for the director to gauge how the performance will go and if the bands will work together. The preparation that goes into the performance all explain the music mastery of the servicemen, marking a tradition, now over 60 years in the running, which celebrates unique cultures from across the globe through music. Moving on from Scotland, let's now look at the turbulent times in Northern Ireland. During the time of troubles in Northern Ireland, a period from around the late 1960s onwards, the ongoing unrest between the Ulster Volunteer Force and the Irish Republican Army, or IRA as they are commonly known, started to turn violent. The Ulster side remained loyal to the British and wished for Northern Ireland to remain a part of the United Kingdom, while the IRA wanted to separate from the UK and become part of the Republic of Ireland. From these troubled times, a subgenre of Irish folk music originated, known as Irish rebel music, which traditionally played on Irish instruments such as the fiddle, tin whistle, and uilleann pipes, among others. The lyrics of these songs dealt with the struggle for Irish freedom, people involved in the liberation movements, and the persecution and violence related with the time of troubles. Many famous songs from this subgenre include A Nation Once Again, Come Out Ye Black and Tans, The Men Behind the Wire, and the Republic of Ireland's national anthem, Aran na Bafan, or the Soldier's Song, which is heard in the background. Some of these songs were so controversial and anti-British that they were outwardly banned by UK radios. Bloody Sunday, sometimes called the Bogside Massacre, was an incident on the 30th of January 1972 in the Bogside area of Derry, Northern Ireland, in which 26 unarmed civil rights protesters and bystanders were shot by soldiers of the British Army. 13 males, 7 of whom were teenagers, died immediately or soon after, while the death of another man 4.5 months later was attributed to the injuries he received on that day. The significance of the event was commemorated with Dublin band U2's 1983 track, Sunday Bloody Sunday. This song speaks not for Irish rebellion, but rather to find a peaceful solution without violence. Today, notable Irish bands still sing out about the tension between the Ulster forces and the IRA. The band Flogging Molly's song, What's Left of the Flag, is about the struggle between Northern Ireland and England and what will be left of Ireland if fighting continues. The Cranberries, a popular 90s band recently reunited, has a song entitled Zombie, commemorating two boys who lost their lives in the Warrington car bombings of 1993. Music in Ireland has not only served as the backbone for Irish culture, but vocalizes the much darker sides of Irish history and political unrest. Now I'd like to look at the religious aspects of music in the UK by using a personal anecdote of my attendance of the Westminster Evensong service and its history. The prestigious Westminster Abbey Choir School has written records dating back to Elizabethan times of the school's founding. Located in the Dean's Yard by Westminster Abbey, the institution is now the only boys' boarding school which exclusively educates choristers. Within the choir school, the music curriculum is designed to complement the vocal training that the boys receive in the Abbey. All boys learn the piano and an orchestral instrument. An orchestral ensemble, theory, and oral classes form part of the overall curriculum as well. The Evensong service, which is conducted every Sunday since its implementation, comprises of 30 boys, all of whom attend the choir school, and 12 professional adult singers known as lay vicars. From a personal perspective, my experience at the Evensong exceeded my expectations. Unlike much of the services I'm used to back home, the choir was the main focus of the sacrament. Instead of already being behind the pews, the choir first sang facing behind one of the major archways of the abbey. Then, the choir entered the worship service by proceeding in with the clergy while the congregation stood. During the service, the choir was split up into the choir boys and the older men. Each time one of these groups would start singing, the alternate group would make a reply and feed off the other. Many times there was a single soloist that would sing a line in which the rest of the choir would reply. I liked this back and forth type of singing because it gave each of the hymns a message that the congregation could take away, especially when it followed a lesson or sermon. This gave me a sense of music as a means of simplifying the teaching given by the clergy. Overall, what the Evensong service at Westminster Abbey expressed to me was how very integral music is in the church's continuing history. More than 1,000 years after the Westminster Abbey's founding, the church still upholds tradition through these evening services. Now let's look at the economic side of music and its effects on UK society. Music in the British Isles has helped foster a large economic surplus from tourism, both domestic, meaning people from around the UK, and overseas. Music tourism involves traveling to concerts, festivals, and other major music venues. A recent study done by the organization UK Music found that the UK receives about £864 million yearly and promotes around 19,700 full-time jobs. In fact, music tourists are such a prevalent part of the UK economy that they generally make up 41% of all the concert goers and 48% of the total people who attend festivals where the music is the primary entertainment. This enormous amount of fiscal prosperity raises another important question. Just why does the UK bank so much on music and music venues? There really isn't any clear-cut answer to this question, but one could say that the UK does have a reputation for being a talent hotspot for music. The following interview conducted with Luke McDonough, Professor of Law at the London School of Economics, explains more.
Well, there's obviously a great history of pop music in the UK, so tourists are interested in that. So, the obvious example would be Liverpool, which is, the airport is even named after John Lennon. You have the Cavern Club, and the museum and all of that. Mm-hmm. You have Manchester also has a specific musical heritage. Mm-hmm. So you have venues there that are still seen in a great light by other tourists. Some of them no longer exist, such as the Hacienda, which was the main pop music venue really for the 80s. But you can do tours of the city. There are specific tours that are set up for tourists to go around and see areas where people from the Smiths and the Happy Mondays and New Order and Joy Division grew up, where they played their first gigs. All of that, how important the city was to them, the industrial mindset and all of that. So anywhere that has a history with pop bands will have that. And obviously London has that in spades as well. The infrastructure is very much there in the UK. It's one of the few net exporters of pop music in the world. I think the US and Sweden are the other two major ones, and Sweden is almost entirely down to ABBA. So it is a vital part of British life, and it's very attractive to tourists. They want to, tourists will go down to Abbey Road and participate in reenacting the cover of the album. Things like that make, and from the point of view of the tourist, it makes them feel as if they're really a part of the history and the continuing kind of life of pop music in Britain.
Of course, I can't talk about the instrumental role of music in the British Isles without talking about London's part. According to UK Music's comprehensive study, tourists in London outnumber London locals 3-1 at concert venues. Major concert venues like the famous O2 Arena and Royal Albert Hall host anyone from Adele to Rod Stewart, gathering an array of different concert attendees. In fact, the O2 Arena has sold more tickets than any other concert venue since its opening in 2007. The London music scene accounts for more than 43% of all music tourists and nearly 31% of all music tourism spending in the UK, roughly £426 million yearly. Here's Professor McDonoghue with more information.
In London, you have Carnaby Street, which is where the Beatles' shop used to be. You have the King's Road, which was a notorious celebrity pop music kind of hangout during the 60s. The Rolling Stones are about to play their comeback gigs, and they've chosen to play those in London at the O2 Arena. Nearly every major pop group in the world will pass through London.
Building off the idea of music and tourism, I had the opportunity to experience the famous Portobello Market in Notting Hill. Milling about the throngs of people, I had no idea how many of the stands had to do with music. The market sold vintage records, cassettes, and all sorts of other music memorabilia. Not to mention how many different street performers there were. I quickly realized how profitable music was in this marketplace, just like one might expect of a concert or festival venue. Portobello Market is all about the vintage feel, antique jewelry, books, silverware, and music, as I've already mentioned. The majority of the music being sold was popular artists of the mid-20th century like Frank Sinatra, Nat King Cole, the Beatles, etc. With the modern technology of iPads, iPods, and other audio streaming devices, I found it interesting that so many people were willing to buy these archaic forms of music. Even the street performers stuck to much older songs. For the most part, these artists adhered to folk songs, but even the popular cover songs I recognized never reached past the 1980s, circa John Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer. Like what Professor McDonoghue alluded to earlier, music has a sense of place that makes it most marketable to tourists. Now I want to come full circle. My ultimate question, what makes music in the British Isles unique, has no one answer but multiple. What it means to one person may mean something entirely different to another.
Whereas over here you get a lot of people that have their own wee styles, their own voices. Just going back to that individuality thing, over here we're allowed to just express whatever we want, and it's not manufactured by some sort of big company. You get a lot of people who are on very small labels, and they just sort of appeal to a much wider audience. I always find that in America or what have you, in the States, the music over there is very commercial. It's all very manufactured.
When I was growing up, we were very influenced by American music, and that's so far ahead of us, pre-Beatles.
However, what the UK music scene does have is its ability to connect people under a patchwork of different topics. Music has a sense of history and having a part in Northern Ireland's fight for independence, showcasing the musical mastery and patriotism of the armed forces, as a means of religious tradition, and as a music hub for tourists around the world. Overall, music in the British Isles' distinctive style have led to its favorable acclaims.
There is a distinctively British kind of pop music. Pop music that is maybe a little bit quirky, a little bit intellectual, witty, that sort of thing, where the lyrics are a bit less open-hearted and a bit more reserved, and kind of a twinkle in the eye.
I think it's an effervescence to life, it's our ability to communicate with the youth.
The British Isles will continue to influence its nation and other countries worldwide. This has been Laura Roser with BBC Radio 1. Good night.